I'd sacrificed everything to Crimson and Vale, my wife's family business, for years. Long nights huddled over spreadsheets, interminable meetings with suppliers, and every ounce of effort I could manage to make it grow. It wasn't just a job to me. It was a promise I made to Clarissa when we got married, a way to prove I belonged in her world. So when she and her sister Bianca invited me into the boardroom that morning, I thought it was about the expansion plans I'd been working. On I stepped in, a stack of papers in hand, ready to talk numbers. But the air felt wrong. Clarissa sat there, arms folded, her face blank, like she barely knew me. Bianca lounged back in her chair, a smirk spreading across her face. Then she spoke, her voice cold and sharp. "Julian, we're letting you go. We don't need lazy people dragging us down." Lazy. The word hit like a slap. I'd been up until 2 a.m. The night before, fixing a deal they had almost botched. I glanced at Clarissa, waiting for her to say something, anything to defend me. She didn't. She just stared at the table, fingers tapping lightly, like this was nothing to her. My chest tightened, but I didn't argue. I didn't yell. I forced a polite smile, the kind I'd used 1,000 times before, nodded once. "All right. Good luck." Then I turned and walked out. My footsteps echoed in the silence they left behind. The rest of the day blurred past me. I drove home in a daze, hands gripping the wheel, sweat slicking the leather beneath my fingertips. Our house, hers really, felt empty. Marble floors, towering ceilings, but it had never felt so hollow. How could she do this? After 8 years of marriage, after everything I'd poured into her family's company, she let Bianca fire me like I was just some disposable employee. My phone buzzed, snapping me out of it. A message from Marco, the company's accountant, a man who'd been by my side through every late-night budget crunch. "Heard what happened. I don't think they read your contract." I frowned. My contract? I hadn't thought about it since I signed it years ago, back when Raphael, Clarissa's father, was still in charge. I texted back, fingers moving fast. "What's in it?" "No immediate reply." I leaned back, thoughts spinning. If there was something in that contract, something they missed, maybe this wasn't over. I got up, poured myself a glass of water, but Bianca's words still burned. Lazy. I rebuilt their supply chain from scratch when it collapsed 3 years ago. I landed the Peterson account, the one that saved them during the recession. Clarissa knew all of it. She had seen me stumble home exhausted. She had kissed me goodnight as I passed out at the kitchen table, laptop still open. Yet today, she didn't even look at me. My phone buzzed again. "Marco, check the merger clause from the subsidiary contract. You're still bound to it." The subsidiary deal. 5 years ago, when we acquired that small tech firm to secure our patents, I had been at the heart of it, negotiating terms while Raphael clapped me on the back, calling me his right-hand man. I set my glass down, my fingers tingling. A merger clause? What did that mean? I spent the next hour digging through my old files, ones I had kept back when I still trusted Clarissa to have my back. And then I found it, a document labeled CNV Merger 2020. I flipped through the pages, barely breathing, legal jargon blurred before my eyes, until I reached page 17. There it was, my name, Julian Rivera, co-chairman of the subsidiary, with full control over its assets, patents, trademarks, intellectual property, the backbone of Crimson and Vale. My heart pounded. They couldn't fire me from this. It wasn't their call. I sat back, staring at the page. A slow smile tugged at my lips. Not the polite one, a real one. They had made a mistake, a massive mistake, and they didn't even know it yet. I grabbed my phone and texted Marco. Found it. "What now?" His reply was instant. "Sit tight. Let them figure it out." I leaned back in my chair. The weight of the day shifted. They thought they had cut me loose, but they had just handed me the rope. All I had to do was wait. The next morning, my phone rang. The name on the screen? Raphael Vale, Clarissa's father, the man who built Crimson and Vale from the ground up. I hesitated. Was he calling to apologize? To gloat? I answered. Hello? His voice roared through the line. Julian, why the hell did they fire you? Have they even read the damn contract? I froze. Raphael didn't know. He hadn't been in that boardroom, hadn't seen Clarissa's blank expression or Bianca's smirk. I let the silence stretch. Then, calmly, I answered. I don't know, Raphael. You'd have to ask them. I could hear him seething, muttering under his breath. Then a dry chuckle. You're still co-chair of the subsidiary. They can't run the company without you. I said nothing. I just let it sink in. Because he was right, and they had no idea. A pause. Then her voice came through, lower than I imagined, strained like she hadn't slept. Julian, can we meet, please? I didn't say anything straight away, just let her words hang there. Meet? After everything? I could sense the desperation. Under her tone, the fracture in that cool front she'd kept up in the boardroom. Why? I asked finally, leaning against the counter. She sighed, a trembling sound. This whole thing, it's a misunderstanding. I want to solve it. A misunderstanding. I almost laughed, but I didn't. I just stated, okay, noon, that place on 5th. She agreed quickly, like she was worried I'd change my mind, and hung up. I laid the phone down, the coffee fragrance filling the air, wondering what she'd attempt to pull. I came to the restaurant early. A tiny location we used to go to back when things were nice. Tables, soft lighting, the kind of place that felt cozy once. Now, it just felt like a stage for whatever this was. I sat in a corner booth, sipping water, watching the door. Clarissa arrived just on time, her coat pulled tight around her, her face pale and worn. She spotted me and contrived a smile, the type that didn't reach her eyes, then slid onto the seat across from me. Hey, she said, her voice light, like we were simply catching up. I nodded, keeping my expression blank. Hey, she fidgeted with her napkin, then leaned in a bit. Julian, I'm sorry about how this went down. It wasn't supposed to be like that. I raised an eyebrow, waiting. She kept talking, her words tumbling out now. Bianca pushed for it, and I didn't know how to stop her. We can figure this out, right? You don't have to freeze everything. I listened, my hands steady on the table, not smiling, not moving. She was attempting to seduce me like she used to when she'd messed up. Big eyes, soft voice, all of it. But it didn't hit the same anymore. The waiter arrived, and she ordered a salad, her fingers twisting the menu before handing it over. I got a burger, keeping it simple. When he left, she tried again. We need you, Julian. The company's a shambles without those approvals. Can't we just leave this behind us? I took a sip of water, letting her stew for a second. Then I heard Bianca's voice in my head, slow, and saw Clarissa's blank look from that day. I set the glass down, slow and careful. A mess. Wow. Odd how that works. She looked caught off guard, but before she could answer, I kept going. You didn't say a word when she dismissed me. You just sat there. Now there's a misunderstanding? Her cheeks flushed, and she looked down, plucking at the napkin again. I didn't want it to happen like that, she whispered. Bianca said we wanted a clean break and Noel backed her up. I assumed... She stopped like she realized it sounded weak. I leaned forward,